Big data is a big buzzword, but what does it really mean and what does it mean to your business? Barry Morrison, Chris Willis from Hitachi Data Systems. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, we've been hearing the words big data a lot lately. Quite the recent buzzword. What does it actually mean?
I think it's a very important word, but I think it's also a word that's not defined today. People, get excited if you're in the IT industry for both positive and negative reasons around big data. How are we going to manage this data? How are we going to turn it into information and all that? Is it here today? It is. Is it changing really quickly? And what I'm saying is that as you start to look out into the future, the amount of data we're storing today and having access today and tomorrow is growing exponentially. And how do we analyze and look into that data and get value out of it? And it's just not about storing data, because we see a lot of people storing data and doing nothing with it. There's no value in that unless there's reasons for that. So what we're saying is I think we have to get a story and a strategy around how we're going to manage this big data, right? And Chris,
I think there's a lot of marketing hype around big data to start with. I think it's important to differentiate what it is and what it might be considered in the future. Today, the big data that we see is around genomics, proteomics, and various other industries, pharmaceutical companies, and they're using data sets that are absolutely huge in comparison to general purpose OLTP, IT within the organization. These are large data sets. They have special needs. They have special computing architectures to address the computational requirements, and they also have very special requirements in terms of throughput from a storage point of view, from a server point of view, and those two worlds have to be synced up and working in unison. So that's why it's a preoccupation. We're seeing the beginning of big data, and we're seeing how these things may trickle into the standard organization's requirements in the future.
But there are new forms of big data coming, and it's things like video and up to video surveillance and video monitoring and things like that. And we're seeing customers now starting to gather that data, which is all video based, now going to IP. And that's where the scary part is.
A lot of that's unstructured data too.
Absolutely,
yes.
all unstructured data.
We know what it is. We know where it comes from. Why do we need that data? I mean, obviously, in the case of pharmaceutical and genomic, those data sets are necessary. But why does a normal IT organization need that data?
Yeah, I think when you look at unstructured data in general, it's also undisciplined data for the most part. It gets very duplicated. It grows quickly. It's the portion of the organization that is the last portion to come into IT professional management. So it means that the users are very close to it. They're accustomed to having a very elastic space to store whatever they need to store. In some cases, it can range from corporate information, Excel spreadsheets that run certain departments, right down to MP3 files. Unstructured data is by nature unstructured. It has no context. A database application is forced into third or fourth normal form, and it's forced to behave in a certain way that avoids duplication. That's not the case in unstructured data. Unstructured data is typically user data or rich media type data, like Barry was saying, and that is a different discipline, and it's actually the hardest thing for most organizations to get their head around. It's also the first place you want to go when you want to affect real value and change in the storage organization, is to start with the unstructured.
Isn't forcing some kind of metadata regime on it one answer?
It does exist, and you'll see it in some example, the new Office suites from Microsoft, where the taxonomy and the ownership and the department that it belongs to is populated up front when a document is actually created. And you have to understand that through virtualization in the back end, what we're doing is abstracting the presentation layer of this unstructured data. So in the back end, it actually is structured now. There are different ways in which we do it. But the net result of this is that we've had to retrofit, in many cases, the old file server regime with a bunch of new tools that are smarter and better equipped to manage this flood of data. And it really is a flood of data on the unstructured.
But it's trying to figure out what to do with that data. I think that's when we really get down to, do we really need it? Yeah. Probably don't need it all. So we need to get the analytics to figure out what we need and how it affects the world or the business world or the problem you're trying to solve. If you can get to that, then we can get value with it. Otherwise, we're storing a lot of data we don't have to store.
Crazy idea.
Yeah.
Maybe not good for your business. But what about just generating less data?
It's an interesting discussion. I've seen it in a couple of RFPs where companies would say they like to slow down the growth of data. I've yet to meet a single organization or application line of business that's able to actually turn around and say, look, you guys are just producing a little bit too much information. Please slow down. It doesn't work that way. Storage is like water. It's fluid. We gave the example, the joking about Holland, and the ocean is always trying to find its way in. Storage is like that. Storage is liquid. It'll find its way somewhere else. If I can't store it on my file server, I'll push it off to my Exchange server. If I can't store it there, I'll put it on a USB drive. So the requirement for the organization is to understand the value of the information that they're storing and how it relates to their business, and assign some type of service level to how it's maintained. In some cases, the delete button is the solution. In many cases, we can't get to the end game and actually push that delete button.
A lot of the business leaders have to make the decision and set the policies. And that's not happening today. So the IT organization are being driven to manage and look after this data. And so until the business starts making the decisions and setting the policies, we're going to have this problem. So we need them to step in and say, we'll keep this data for this, we'll keep this type of data.
This is a good point. The data is not owned by IT. IT is the stewards of the data. And therefore, the ownership lies with the line of businesses. And the knowledge management folks have to be able to assign a value or some policy that people can conform to and IT can engineer to. These are important points.
Yeah.
Chris, Barry, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.